welcome back to Renee Ruth Real Estate. Hope everyone is doing well.
We are. It's like spring.
I know, right? That was November.
This is November, and I'm literally wearing like spring clothes. I am as confused as the weather is.
Yeah, no.
I think we mean to start all these podcasts with weather conversations.
With like a weather report.
Weather report.
It is November, and it is almost 80 degrees
Today's
outside.
update. Next week it's gonna be 80.
So insane.
Welcome to Virginia.
I know.
Yeah.
So how's it going?
Good. I had COVID last week, so I'm still trying to like get myself back together. Luckily these days for me it's just kind of like a flu situation. So,
Fair.
but how is it? I'm like scrambling to like put my life back together.
Or sleep.
I need to know. Okay, yeah. But how are you?
Good. We are going to bring on the positive vibes today. So.
I saw like that magazine came in when I was all COVID-y, and I was like, John, look, positive vibes. That magazine's so great, realtor. You're an agent, get on it.
Yeah. So we're gonna talk about all the positive vibes today.
Let's discuss all the positive vibes.
So it was actually a really amazing article. So this is going to be a little teaching session today.
Listening.
Recline, little coaching, little powwow.
Get
So
pen
this
and
is
paper out and start writing.
right. So this is an agent-focused podcast today. So agents, watch it.
Focus.
Let's do it. So what they said was, break through fear of the changing market to show buyers and sellers how a pro gets it done.
But it said breakthrough fear.
So fear is like a big thing because I feel like, and I think you can also, speak to that when you're a commission-based person, like there can be a lot of fear that creeps in when things shift and that, especially with the market, the way it goes. So as a seller, you can imagine that also is going to bring in a lot of fear as well.
It's interesting because as you work with different clients and then you hear kind of the chatter, you can kind of almost tell what channels they listen to. like I have the clients that clearly pay no attention to the news.
Right.
Then the ones who are giving me like the real, I'm like, oh, okay, so you're deep into whatever you're being told is going on. And yeah, I think, so I don't, and that's what's also super interesting about this particular day and age is that like, think about this, in the 60s, there was like how many news channels?
Right.
So news was very like, everybody kind of heard the same things, which is fascinating. Like, how controlled were people back then?
Yeah.
Like, were they?
No, I was gonna say, like, who was
Who would know?
right? I mean, literally 3 channels. Like it
Who
was,
would know?
like there wasn't as much out. So anything was on either newspapers or it was newspaper, radio, or actual TV, which wasn't like as huge at that point.
Then introduce a pandemic,
Right.
and everyone now has cell phones. And interestingly, even with cell phones, it's so funny. Like you can have a first-hand account of a situation from someone with a cell phone. The news will say different, and they put it in the news. Like,
right. Oh, exactly.
It's like, this random person has nothing to gain by saying, it's actually like this. And like, so in a world of misinformation, like I feel like that's where we live right now. In a world of misinformation, I think there's just a lot of innate fear. I think the pandemic actually like planted fields of fear. And they've been harvesting, and so you just have a lot of very unsettled people.
Right.
And so I think that's why I was joking. I forget what agent I was on the phone with, but we were joking how we actually don't get paid enough for our job because we're not just real estate agents, we're kind of like also psychotherapists, marriage counselors. Like
no, it's true.
The list of hats.
Yeah. So I mean, and I think that it's important to remember that when you feel the moment of fear, remember that that's how others are feeling too. That you're not alone in that. So it's literally the moment where you get ahead of them because you did it when they wouldn't. And the it meaning referring to taking action necessary to generate the income.
So I would even go backwards further and say generate the action necessary to not live in fear.
Right.
Like, and it's funny because we're just gonna say I had no fear. Like when I saw the shift come, I was like, cool. I was tired. The 2 years of the pandemic, I'm like, literally, I was listening to a podcast or a call the other day. It was a call with Jay Nelson's crew, and he was talking about how, prior to the pandemic, our business was almost pretty predictable. You're like, okay, spring, everyone's going to think about selling. Your big months will be June because school gets out, so your big months are June, July, August. And then it's going to dip again, and then weirdly, and I didn't know this because I was still newer in the field, so I would hear about these, when it was busy and not. But they said December was also a really busy month.
Interesting.
Maybe because they knew the kids were going to come out of school, so you had time to, I don't know.
Oh,
They
okay.
said December, and then it would drop off. So,
Yeah.
but it was just kind of this very predictable cycle for a long time, right? So then when pandemic hit, March came, and by April we ran. And when Christmas came, I was like, hey, I'm ready for a lull. Like, we're banking on this lull. Like, okay, January's going to be slow. Nope. The whole next year we ran. I'm like, so come the next Christmas, we're like, there's no end in sight. I'm just gonna work for the rest of our lives. I was like, there's no holiday. Like, we were just, oh my gosh. So come this summer or even it was spring when the rates started to climb, I was like, bring it. Like, and I think depends on what you're in this. If you came into the pandemic because you wanted to cash in,
Right.
that would be scary because you're not prepared for a more normal market. And so, where I learned how to build my business in a normal market. So
Right.
I just went back to my old, I was like, oh, okay, cool, let's go back and do this. So I think if you're listening and you have fear because you came in during the pandemic, saddle up next to somebody that was a pre-pandemic agent because they're going to know what to do.
No, it's true. It's true. And it's funny that you hit social media a moment ago because that's actually where I was heading.
Sorry about that.
Right. So it's the difference of separating fiction and fact because.
But it's left up to the individual.
Right. No, it's definitely the individual, but you just have it's them having to understand that they may not be getting accurate information depending on where they're getting their resources.
Right.
And just the fact that there are so many, because everybody is vying for attention. So they're gonna, tweak the story, they're gonna say this, say that, getting everybody in a frenzy.
Well, let's just break this down further. You're somebody on social media that wants likes and views. What gets that sensationalism?
Right.
What is sensationalism built on? Fear. So you have all these people vying for their corner of fame in social media, leveraging whatever they can get to create whatever emotion they need to create. And then there's all these consumers that are just like lapping it up and riding this emotional roller coaster. And I'm just like, oh, no. I'm gonna watch you all ride it.
Right.
I'll be over here. But yeah, like I even had a client last night that we were looking at, because fact and fiction, like that changes location to location. So I had like Roanoke clients come up, and the valued houses in Roanoke is different valued houses here, and they're like, well, our market, this is happening, and houses are doing this, and rates are doing this, and rates are consistent because that's a natural thing. But like, yeah, location wise, they're like, well, our house is about the same price, and it's it's updated, and we did, and I'm like, how much land do you have? And they're like, oh, 0.7. I'm like, this is 3.7. Do you have mountain views? Because it had like these huge mountain views behind them, and they're like, well, no. And I'm like, those are all like, but they don't live in an area that has mountains, so there is no mountain view value. Yeah. So it was interesting getting them to look at me, like, because I'm like, you're right, the house is dated, but it has these things, and it was like, oh, so sometimes the education piece with fact and fiction is not even that, because that's not like it wasn't fictional what they knew.
Right.
It was locational.
Yeah.
And then having, educating them into another space, but gently, right? Like you don't want to be like, okay, that's dumb. It's like, what are you talking about? The mountain views, like,
Right.
Instead of being like, so you have that.
Well, exactly. Well, no, I'll skip ahead because it's funny how you're hitting all these points, but not in line with where I'm at.
Because I didn't read the article.
Right. Not read the article, but because again, one of the other things that they were saying was being able to talk them off a ledge, or be able to like work with them when they're like, why did my neighbor get so much more than were you getting, and all of these things, because like you said, so much of it is circumstantial. It could be based on when they're selling, what is coming, what is included in what they're getting, the rates, how many offers are on the table, which could also, there are so many things that could play into why they're not getting the price.
If you're referring to a seller in this situation,
Yes.
we're in a very uncomfortable place, because an appraiser could go back 12 months. Well, if you go back 12 months ago, there was a shortage of houses, everybody's fighting, and multiple offers, and they're through the roof, right?
Yeah.
So if you comp a home from 12 months ago to a home today, those values will not match. But your seller's gonna say, but my neighbor, and it's like, that was like even 6 months ago, we were still kind of in a race, right? So anyone that listed, over the summer, they're still sitting. So this is what you have to, like, this is what you have to say to your seller. I'm happy to go for that value, but here's the reality. If no one comes to look at it, if, like, I have a seller right now, if he would have listed a year earlier, I would have sold his house like that. And now it's sitting. And he doesn't want to come off his price. And to be fair, I don't think he should have to, but the market for $1 million homes dried up.
Right.
Like, just dried up. So, no. So he's going to have to sit and wait. And unfortunately, he didn't get excited about trying to sell until the summer.
Right.
So, or like end of spring. So it's, and then it's, so it's that, like, you know, coddling, you know, coaching, coddling your clients, like, it's going to be okay. You know?
Right.
And I made an interesting post I copied from someone who actually, she commented, oh, I'm glad you copied it. I was like, are we upset about this? But she, because I was too lazy to restructure it, I literally was like, that's cool. Probably should have tagged her, but it felt like it was an original idea.
Right,
She literally was
yeah.
talking about how a year ago, you know, you were paying 20% over list, you know, you're paying an appraisal gap, you're paying no home inspection, so you're paying for whatever damages you know you bought. Like, so the list of expenses were so, but your rate was really low, right? So that was the trick. Well, now the rate is higher, but you get your home inspection, you get your appraisal, you're not paying over list, you might get closing costs, you come up. So like, I had I said this one intelligent buyer who was just like, you're gonna pay somewhere. And I'm like, that is the absolute
that's
truth.
true.
No, that's
Yeah.
what people, it's like, there's always like that balance, you know, so when one goes up, the other goes, like, so there, it just depends, and that's what, it depends on what your game is. Like, if you're a rate player, then this is not your game, you know, but if you're in for home ownership, it's always your game. You know, like, there's never a time not to do that. And then that's where, like, so where's your fear? Go find the people that are not rate conscious, those are your people.
Right, well, exactly. Well, and I'm curious what you would say with this.
We know I got a lot to say. So.
Well, because I said it's important to talk up front about what you'll do if the house is sitting, if it still sits in a given time frame. And they suggested never to say reduce the price, but to instead say we're going to reposition the house on the market to correctly reflect buyers' expectation.
Well, what does reposition mean? Because to me, if you're going to reposition the house to reflect expectation, you have to lower the price. So how are they trying to do that?
Would it be that, or would it be doing more things in the house to accommodate what the reason it's not selling?
Well, that depends, right? So, like, you know, the guy that I have that has it sitting, he has no interest in doing more to the house. So our only option then is to lower the
Right,
price.
would be to lower.
My conversation recently was that we should let it breathe.
Mm.
It's been sitting, it's not selling, let's take it off.
Right.
Because people aren't stupid, they can see it was listed. If you take it off and put it on 4 days later, some people might notice that, but guess what? If you take it off and put it 4 days later, it's brand new in the market. And then you're not doing this massive reduction where people think it's a fire sale. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, there's a lot of psychology to this. Like, even back to the whole idea of psychology, like I was telling you, we're back to open houses. And we're back to like these fundamental business building practices, and open houses, for whatever reason, had people, agents and clients see an open house and think it's going to sell that day. So like, doing them is great. You may never sell at the open house. In fact, that doesn't even happen that often.
Yeah.
But people will see the open house and then make an offer. Like, that's what happened to Mabel. 2 open houses, 3 people came, 3 people offered. Didn't happen at the open house.
Right.
But that was what pushed that through.
Wow,
So like,
that's amazing.
yeah, it's just utilizing, you know, old skill sets, where before we were just throwing contracts, like just slinging. It was, I feel like I can breathe. We can finally focus on this kind of, like, you know, like there's time now to put into other spaces. No, I'm not selling 10 a month, but that was insane. You can attest to that.
That was insane.
It was insane.
It was absolutely insane.
10 a month is insane.
Yeah.
5 a month is great.
Yeah.
Just moving 5 little houses a month is great.
There's room to breathe.
Oh,
Room to breathe.
yes.
So this, we say very often that knowledge is power, but we're going to take it a step further, because Napoleon Hill, who was amazing, love it. He said, knowledge is only potential power. It becomes power only when and if it is organized into definite plans and directed to a definite end.
Action. So I just said that to a girl on the phone today, because she was like, I love this, because we're in a very Christian area, it's the Bible Belt. And she's like, are you a Christian? I said, yes. And she's like, so you know, you believe in God? I said, yes. She goes, I know God's going to bring me the right house. I'm laughing because like I have this vision of God just like coming from heaven and going, here.
There it is.
So I'm like, and now is she incorrect? No. But so that's what I said to her. I'm like, oh, I believe God will do that. I was like, but God helps those who help themselves. Like you can't, like, so she only wanted to look at houses that were 120,000. And I was like, I don't think that's wise.
Mm-hmm.
I said, can we maybe educate yourself? Because she wants 4 beds with a backyard and a baby. In a good area. We're chuckling because that doesn't exist anymore.
Not designed.
And I, you have to find a nice way to like not laugh at her. Which like, how do I nicely say like, yeah, you're gonna need to move to the outskirts of Kansas, like.
Right.
What? So I was like, okay. I was like, so I think we're gonna have to compromise somewhere. Is what I always say. Like, so we're gonna have to make a compromise. Well, I know that. I'm like, okay. Well, I can't decide where your compromise is. I was like, so let me send you houses up to 200,000 because then you can see. Then you're learning the market and you know where you're going to compromise because backyards and basements, like they all sit in a space in terms of neighborhoods. And so I was like, I cannot tell you about neighborhoods. And there it is.
Oh.
There was a sidebar. There was this bee. Oh my God, he came back to life. He was right there.
A bee made it into the building.
Went across my arms, thought it died there, and he just flew out. That was insane. I thought he was dead. Sorry, ADD. He's over by the camera right now. So anyway, I told her, I was like, let me send it so you can educate. And that's the thing, like, and I kindly said to her, like, action is where God's able to bring things. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's the same idea as saying you want to win the lottery and never buy a ticket.
Right, exactly. Not going to happen.
Yeah, and look, God's amazing. God is amazing.
Yeah.
And could God do it? Absolutely. But is he going to? No.
No, can't
You
sit at
have
home.
to like, like if you're listening to this and you're sitting at home waiting for God to do something, you're doing this wrong.
Yeah.
Like, just do, and then it'll come. So
Right.
yeah, it was really funny today. She's like, are you a Christian? I'm like, yes. I was like, but I believe God helps those who help themselves.
Yeah, action.
Action, which is what he's saying.
Yeah, so I mean.
Knowledge is useless. It's a book on a shelf.
Right.
That book is not going to do any good
Not
until
gonna do
you
anything
ever
for
read
you.
it.
No. So your actions, as an agent, your actions create your market.
Oh, and thoughts and actions, because thoughts become things, and actions become outcomes.
Right.
Thoughts become things, and actions become outcomes. So if your thought is that this is a really awful market, and I'm going to struggle, and it's going to be really difficult, guess. Have you ever heard the phrase self-fulfilling prophecy?
It will happen for
That's
you
what
then.
you're going to get. Congratulations. You just wrote your next chapter. If
Yeah.
you're like, okay, cool. I'm going to figure out how to pivot in this new market. I'm going to figure out how to find new people to help. I'm really excited about these changes. You get excited about it.
Yeah.
Then your outcome is different because guess what? In that excitement, you will move in directions you wouldn't move if you were living in fear.
Exactly.
So that's why I woke, and I was just so grateful because we're so busy. I woke up, I was like, great, let's do something different. We got excited about we got excited first-time homebuyer clinics and all those first-time homebuyers that were neglected because guess what? In a pandemic market, the first-time homebuyers stood no chance. They couldn't do it. You had to be cash heavy. You had to be we're talking 10, 12 offers on. The first-time homebuyers have been neglected for 2 years. It's your turn. It's their turn to.
Right.
It's the first-time homebuyer's turn.
That's right. Consistency is undefeated.
Undefeated.
Undefeated. All right, so listen up. This is not for you, Renee, because you do not do this.
Oh.
Listen up, because this is going to hurt a little bit.
It's gonna sting.
It's going to sting a little bit.
Like the little bee that.
Right. So don't confuse social media likes or drip email open rates with contacts. That's what I'm saying.
Say that again for the people in the
Right.
back.
Don't confuse social media likes or drip email open rates with contacts. These are passive lead generation techniques.
They're useful.
They're useful and they can help, but proactive lead generation is having meaningful conversations with friends, allied professionals, past clients, expired listings, for sale by owners, anyone who might need your services and or that would know of someone that might.
Mono e mono. So let's talk about this. In the 4 years that I built with EXP and achieved all those awards, never once did a lead come from a drip campaign. I never even had drip campaigns. I didn't even have any kind of a follow-up with my past clients. It wasn't even referral based because I wasn't working that market.
No.
Because I didn't see that wasn't something that was going to generate the kind of outcome I needed now.
Right.
And only now that the pandemic's over and I have extra time, am I talking about creating like,
right. Yeah.
and I don't even
just now doing
just
that.
now, but I don't even view that as income producing. I just view it as like nurturing. Like these are people that I once spent significant time with. Like,
Right.
it's like, you know, it's like summer camp. You're with someone like heavy and hard for like a short amount of time, and you never talk again. You have this like, for the first time I was in real estate for a while, I was like, I kind of miss those people. And then, you know, you can never, like, that's just the nature of the beast. So finding a way to like keep those relationships going, but I didn't have time to worry about that because I was too busy building.
Right.
So,
Exactly.
you know, he's right. Like, you never think about that. Those are all passive and probably not even something you should worry about spending your time on.
No.
Worry about finding people that you can call, you know, direct message. So like person to person.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say this to all the people I train. If it's not voice to voice, you need to get it voice to voice within the second touch.
Right.
So if it's on an email or if it's on a message or if you, hey, when can we talk?
Right.
If you don't get them on the phone, you have not done your job.
Right.
You're not doing anything
No.
income producing.
No.
Nothing.
Maybe you can take, if you want to take all the likes that you got and message all those people that
Independently,
liked it, then there
but
you
till you
go.
get them on the phone, that's
You
still
gotta-
not
yeah.
income producing, right?
Exactly.
Like, but that would actually
So-
be lead generating.
Exactly. So I mean, that can be part of it, but don't mistake that. Because you're like, oh yeah, I contacted my 10.
I don't
people
think
today.
anyone's mistaking it, Tad. I think that they just don't want to do the hard work.
Right.
Let's be real.
That's fair.
I don't think
That's fair.
there's no, if you're being honest, there's no mistake. You just
Mhm.
want it to be that easy.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's not how humans don't work like that.
No, and your bank account will not reflect
It
it.
will not. If you're hurting, listen, go back and reflect on your day to day.
Right.
Does this sound familiar?
Yeah. So I mean, whatever the market brings, there'll always be opportunity for the agents who have the desire and ability to drive to success. So.
There is a woman in town who's very well known, and she was once asked, because she's been in the business for 30 years, and she was once asked, like, how did she survive, you know, the crash
Yeah.
of 0708, and because she's, you know, her words were, you know, if you are a good agent and you're working to help people and you're people driven and people focused, you will never hurt for business. And I've never forgotten that. So like if you're money driven, money focused, it's gonna be a rough year for you. But if you're focused on helping people, there's enough for everyone.
Enough.
That's the other thing. Don't look to the left or the right. Who cares what they're doing?
Mm-mm.
There is enough business. If this is what you want to do, there's enough business for you. You need to believe that and that and keep going.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Do we have a fun fact?
We do.
Oh, good. I was like, sometimes you think it's
All right. This is a crazy. Oh, I love to be fun fact
So
right
do I. I was like, did he have time to get one?
no, it's so good. This I had no idea. I had no idea. Your mind's gonna be blown. Get ready for this. So in Japan, there are no old houses.
What? That's like an old country.
Right? No.
Is it because they don't live in houses? They
No,
live
it's
in
because
trees?
every 20 houses in Japan lose their value between 20 and 30 years, and then they demolish them.
Huh?
So when they move out, they get torn down and they rebuild.
That sounds concerning. Because when you think about, I'll say this, because when you think about like how they're constructing houses now, and there's a lot of conversation here about how they're not constructed as well as they were in the old days. Because in the old days, there was craftsmanship involved. Now we're just slapping up houses, right? So
Right.
like,
Well, because they had made mention of how, you know, because of the rate of storms that come through that end up demolishing things anyway, and not wanting to like deal with all the maintenance that is involved.
With water damage.
Yeah, like it's easier to just be done with them. Which also makes me think that people are obviously living in these homes for a long time, because they said when someone moves out, then they demolish it and rebuild. So I feel like
there
also.
could be one that's older than.
So I mean, there could be one, but so they
You live
said
in
like.
your whole life that's like 80
Yeah,
years.
so it's like so it's like if you stay in it, I wonder if there could be because they haven't moved out, or if they hit like a certain market or like a certain point, they're like, okay, we have to tear down your house now.
That is so, well, see,
So-
you know, like in our market, we're in historic Virginia, so we have lots of old stuff.
Yeah.
But some of them are so derelict that they're in
Mhm.
like a teardown situation.
Yeah,
So I wonder if one
absolutely.
day like they're gonna come through and they'll just be like an entire, because you could really improve areas quickly if you just kind of, because there's some
Got
of
it
them,
done.
yeah, because there's
Yeah.
some of them that should not be salvaged.
No.
That's awesome.
Isn't that crazy?
Thank you for
Yeah.
that.
So a lot of new houses in Japan.
New houses in Japan.
So Well, thank
If
you.
you like new construction, move there.
Right,
Thank
exactly.
you, Chad. Thanks
Thanks,
for joining
guys.
us.
See you next week.
Cheers.